Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. There was once a village where people rarely spoke aloud. Not because they lacked words, but because every climb they ever uttered turned into clouds. Real clouds, soft, weightless, drifting sound turned into sky. A mother saying goodnight would release a silver wisp above her child's bed. A lover whispering come back would watch their breath rise like dawn fog. Laughter became pale blue ribbons. Anger became dark storm lines. Regret reigned. In that place, language was not only heard, it was seen. But clouds faded with time, scattering into forgetfulness. Only one person in the village could stop that from happening. A girl named Elara. Of the girl the sky did not forget. Elara was small, quiet, ordinary at first sight. But the sky behaved differently when she spoke. Where others left thin, dying trails of speech drifting into the wind, Elara's words became ink. Deep, blue, staying. Clouds she formed did not float away. They held shape, sometimes for days, sometimes for seasons, once for an entire year. On winter nights, people would look up and still see her childhood sentence. I wish I knew why I remember you. They whispered that the sky chose her, or that destiny placed a pen inside her voice. Maybe neither. Maybe Elara simply felt too much for ordinary clouds to dissolve. Though her words stayed, she rarely used them. She feared permanence. She feared hurting with sentences that couldn't fade. She feared loving in text that could not be erased. So Elara spoke only when necessary, and lived inside the soundless space of unspoken meaning. People admired her clouds, but misunderstood her silence. They thought her distant, aloof, a girl wrapped in vapor and moonlight. They did not know silence was not absence for her. It was pressure. 1,000 unsentences waiting for release. One dawn, when the world was still gray and half asleep, Elara awoke to a sky that wouldn't change. Her mother called her for breakfast, and the word morning rose like silver haze. But instead of drifting, the clouds stopped, hung in place, did not move. Across the village the same happened. Bread hovered above the baker's door. Hurry trembled behind a late shepherd. Children shouted and their laughter clouds froze mid-spiral. The sky was stuck. It was listening, waiting. For what? Elara felt it like wind inside bone. A pull, a calling, a page turning in air. Something wanted to be written, not spoken, written, and she was the only one who could. That night, instead of sleeping, she climbed the hill beyond the village. The sky stretched endless above her, pale as unwritten paper. Her breath trembled like ink still in glass. She looked upward and said, "Slowly, let me try." Her words rose, dark, steady, clear. Clouds thickened like wool beneath moonlight. Not random, not drifting, forming lines. Elara reached out her hand and every fingertip left blue vapor trails. She could write on the air. The sentence appeared like a constellation. Who are you, sky? The world held breath. Even the trees seemed to lean closer. Moments later, clouds rearranged themselves, not by wind but by will. The sky answered, "We are what you remember." Alara's pulse hammered in her throat. Clouds were not only recordings of speech, they were memory of the village, of lives lived beneath, and of something older, something forgotten. The sky replied again, slower, heavier, right? Remember us before we fade. The world suddenly felt enormous, and Alara was holding the only pen. Over the next weeks, she returned to the hill every night. She wrote questions in vapor. Where did we come from? What happens to clouds when they vanish? Why do I remember what others forget? And the sky wrote back. Cloud letters shimmered like moonlit script. We were voices you have not lived. Stories too heavy to rain. Memories waiting for breath. Some clouds were joyful, childlike words of old celebrations. Others wept, full of names she didn't know, faces she saw only in vapor and dream. When Alara traced one sorrow cloud with her finger, it fell like rain light across her palm, and she remembered a grief that wasn't hers. A girl searching the shoreline for a brother who never returned. Promise unkept. A goodbye unsaid. Alara fell to her knees, breath shaking. She was not reading words. She was remembering souls. With each letter she wrote, clouds dimmed less. Instead of fading, they accumulated. The sky grew heavy with unspoken histories. Love still warm. Regret that never closed. Dreams paused mid-sentence. And something else. Something rising. A shape forming high above, vast and unfinished. No longer a single sentence. A story. Alara could feel it unfolding like wings behind the stars. Not memory. Awakening. One night, as she wrote the word why, the sky answered not with vapor but with thunder-soft voice. Because someone must hold what we were. And beneath that voice, a deeper tone, like echo of ancient ink. Write more. Alara returned every night. Her words poured out like rivers of thought that had waited years to breathe. Sentences curved across moonlit sky. Paragraphs formed like drifting cities. Stories wove themselves through stars like silk. Villagers gathered silently beneath her writing, reading what clouds remembered of them. One dawn, when the world was still gray and half asleep, Alara awoke to a sky that wouldn't change. Her mother called her for breakfast, and the word morning rose like silver haze. But instead of drifting, the clouds stopped, hung in place, did not move. Across the village the same happened. Bread hovered above the baker's door. Hurry trembled behind a late shepherd. Children shouted and their laughter clouds froze mid-spiral. The sky was stuck. It was listening, waiting. For what? Alara felt it like wind inside bone. A pull, a calling, a page turning in air. Something wanted to be written, not spoken, written, and she was the only one who could. That night, instead of sleeping, she climbed the hill beyond the village. The sky stretched endless above her, pale as unwritten paper. Her breath trembled like ink still in glass. She looked upward and said, slowly, let me try. Her words rose, dark, steady, clear. Clouds thickened like wool beneath moonlight. Not random, not drifting, forming lines. Alara reached out her hand and every fingertip left blue vapor trails. She could write on the air. The sentence appeared like a constellation. Who are you, sky? The world held breath. Even the trees seemed to lean closer. Moments later, clouds rearranged themselves, not by wind but by will. The sky answered, "We are what you remember." Alara's pulse hammered in her throat. Clouds were not only recordings of speech. They were memory of the village, of lives lived beneath, and of something older, something forgotten. The sky replied again, slower, heavier, right? Remember us before we fade. It glowed in soft blue beneath her foot, and when she walked, the sentence broke into tiny vapor flecks, as if being read aloud by the wind. The path ahead was made of words, not written by her, but spoken by generations beneath this sky. Parent calling a child in spring, a widow whispering a name into winter, a stranger confessing their first fear. Every step carried a voice. Every voice carried a life. The farther she walked, the more the air thickened with memory. The path curved, gently, patiently, until it opened into a vast chamber of pale silver mist. It was not empty. Names hung like stars, thousands of them drifting, circling, pulsing, some bright as newborn joy, some dim as last regret. Alara reached toward one glowing softly, the name Arian. The moment her fingertip passed through its vapor, the world changed again. She was not standing. She was inside a memory. A boy ran across a field of golden rye, laughing, hair bright, eyes like morning. He called back toward someone Alara could not see, voice soft with affection. "Come on. The wind is slow today. We can race it." Alara felt his delight as though it were hers. His lungs filled her lungs. His heartbeat echoed her ribs. For one fragile moment she was Aryan, alive in a morning that the world had long forgotten. Then the scene cracked, like glass touched by frost. Rye faded to white. Wind fell silent. The boy's laughter thinned into memory. And she was back in the chamber of names, heart racing, eyes wet with unfamiliar tears. The name Arian flickered weakly, then stilled. Not gone, remembered, because she had held him. For the first time, Alara understood the sky fully. It did not store words. It stored lives. Every cloud was a heartbeat. Every sentence was breath trying not to vanish. Umbrella where forgotten stories waited to speak. Alara continued deeper. More names floated around her, forming trails through mist. Leora, Salem, Theron, Eva, Corin. She touched one, and a woman's voice filled her mind. "Let me be heard, just once more." Alara whispered back, "I will write you." The chamber brightened, softly grateful, and farther ahead something stirred. The mist thinned into a long, winding hall of cloud paper, words crawling along its surface like ants of light, sentences stacked on sentences, spiraling upward into a vault of white. Some lines were neat and proud, others jagged like scars. Everything written here was a memory too heavy to fade. Scroll the library of unspoken thought. Alara entered slowly. Here clouds had become shelves. Scrolls of vapor rested in rows, their edges shimmering pale as moonfrost. One drifted toward her, unrolling itself like a sigh. It read, a promise to wait, broken by time. A son who never came home. A song remembered by no ear. Alara's chest tightened. This was not just sky. This was grief that refused to vanish. She opened another scroll. Inside was not ink, but memory. A mother's hands weaving wool. A lantern burning during a storm. A child's voice calling, I'm still here, into the night. Alara closed it quickly, shaking. No mortal should carry so many ghosts. And yet, she could not look away. Cloud with rain, the first storm memory. At the far end of the library stood a doorway darker than night, shaped like a teardrop. Cloud water dripped from it, forming small ripples across the floor of mist. It whispered her name, not Alara, but something older, deeper, Inkborn, Keeper, Scribe. She stepped through, and the sky broke open. Rain did not fall from above. It rose from below, memories flooding upward like reversed gravity. Voices collided. Help me. Do not forget me. Write my name. Let me exist. Alara stumbled, drowning in stories not hers. Faces, ages, battles, births, thousands at once, screaming to be remembered. She nearly fell, until one voice cut through the storm. Calm. The rain froze in air. Memories held their breath. A figure formed in the storm, not made of cloud, but of sky, human-shaped, ink-stitched, eyes like constellations. He spoke with thunder the way others breathed. You asked to see the story the sky cannot carry alone. Alara could not move, could barely think. The figure raised a hand, and rain settled obediently, like ink inside paper. So now it will show you. The sky figure guided her into the heart of the storm. There, suspended like the moon inside a dream, was a single massive sentence, longer than any she had ever written. She read it, slowly. Each word struck her like lightning, like recognition she had never earned. Before memory was voice, before clouds were born, there was a girl like you. Her breath stopped. Like me? She whispered. The sky answered without wind. A writer of storms, a scribe of heaven, the first one to hold forgotten things. Alara staggered. Another like her. Before history, before clouds, before time. She reached toward the sentence. It split like ink under fingertip, revealing more. She wrote until the sky was heavy. She held until she could not breathe. She vanished, and memory shattered into weather. Alara's pulse thundered. The clouds were not just memory. They were remnants of the last scribe. A girl who wrote the sky full and broke beneath it. Alara stepped back, heart trembling. Why show me this? The sky figure answered gently, terribly, because you are what remains of her. Crescent moon destiny written in vapor. Alara shook her head, but the storm memory sealed around her like fate. Lifetimes echoed in her bones. Unwritten words fluttered in her lungs like trapped birds. She was not just chosen. She was returned. And the sky, for the first time, sounded afraid. Write carefully, Alara. Ink can build worlds, or drown them. The storm dimmed. The library hushed. Alara stood alone, but no longer singular. Alara stood alone, but no longer singular. Something ancient was awake inside her. Something ink-born. She looked upward, and the sky rippled like an eye opening. This was no longer about remembering. It was about rewriting the forgotten. The clouds whispered like prayer. Continue. Alara turned toward the deeper halls of memory, heart steady, ink pulsing in her veins. And she walked forward, into the story even the sky feared to hold alone. The sky was quieter after the storm memory faded. Not empty, never empty, but still in a way Alara had never felt before, as if every cloud held its breath around her. The great chamber of mist and shelves and drifting names waited, listening to the echo of the last revelation. Because you are what remains of her. The words still rang behind her ribs like struck bells. Alara stood very still. She could feel it now, a second rhythm beneath her heartbeat. Not a sound, but a pressure, like unwritten sentences pressing against her lungs from the inside, waiting for a page that could survive them. She was not just Alara of the small village where words became clouds. She was the latest syllable of an older story, the story of the scribes of the sky. The floor of mist steadied under her feet, forming a clearer path. Not back toward the library, and not further into Stormdark. It curved into something new, a corridor made of overlapping memories, translucent and slow like drifting veils. As Alara walked, scenes flickered at the edge of her vision. A girl with ink-black hair standing on a cliff, arms raised as storms shaped themselves into script above her. A boy tracing constellations, turning them into letters. An old woman whispering forgotten names into a cave, clouds curling from her tongue and etching themselves along the stone. The sky had always been written, by different hands, different lives, different losses. Alara watched all this and whispered, half in awe, half in fear, "Why me?" The sky answered with a small, almost human sound, "Because you still ask that." The ones who never questioned themselves had broken under less. The corridor widened into a circular hall with walls that looked like mirrors smeared with fog. Alara approached one carefully. Inside, she expected to see her own face. Instead, she saw a girl who looked almost like her. Older by a few years, perhaps, with sharper eyes and ink staining not just fingers, but wrists, forearms, even cheekbones. She was standing in the middle of a storm, laughing as words and thunder wrapped around her like a cloak. The first scribe, Alara thought, the one who came before clouds. The girl in the mirror paused as if she had heard the thought. She turned slowly, and for a moment, with that impossible, timeless logic of memory, their gazes met. "You are not me," the storm girl said without sound. Alara swallowed. "Then what am I?" The reflection stepped closer, hand lifting as if to touch the inside of the fogged glass. "A choice," the girl mouthed. The mirror rippled, and the image broke apart into streaks of light. Alara moved to another panel. This one showed her, but not as she was. In it, She stood atop her village hill with clouds wrapped around her shoulders like a cape, words spiraling out from her voice in endless streams, covering the sky horizon to horizon. At first it was beautiful. Then she saw the cracks. The weight of all that ink pulled the clouds low, pressing on roofs, bending trees, dimming stars. People below walked slower, as if their chests were heavy with air they could not fully breathe. A sky too full of memory cannot move. The image flickered. In the reflection, Elara's eyes were hollowed with exhaustion. She took a step back, pulse stumbling. Is that what happens if I keep writing? The hall did not answer. It didn't need to. She understood. There was more than one way to drown a world. At the center of the hall, a pedestal of condensed cloud waited, its surface smooth and flat like untouched parchment. Words began to form upon it, not from above but from within. What will you keep? What will you release? Who will you be when you decide? Elara traced the questions with her fingertips. They were cold, like water pulled from deep earth. What I keep becomes sky, she murmured. The thought alone made her chest ache. There were so many lives she wanted to hold, so many stray stories she did not want to see vanish into unwitnessed silence. But she remembered the reflection of the sky that sagged with too many words. And what I release disappears? Not disappears, the sky corrected gently. Transforms. A cloud that fades can become rain. Mist, a new beginning. Memory that is never allowed to change becomes prison. Elara closed her eyes. Choosing what stayed and what passed on was not a power. It was a wound waiting to open. Who will you be when you decide? She didn't know, but she knew this. Someone had to decide. The last scribe had tried to keep everything, and it had broken her. Elara would not make the same mistake, even if that meant letting go of things she loved. Even if that meant letting go of parts of herself. A soft glow spread through the hall, and mist gathered in the center of the ceiling, swirling and tightening until it formed a vast eye of light. Not watching her, remembering her. She felt its gaze the way one feels the weight of a story about to begin. You think you are writing us, the sky said quietly. You are, Elara replied inside herself. And you are writing me back. A low hum of amusement rolled through the air. We dreamed of you before you were born. The sentence made her shoulders square and knees weaken at the same time. Dreamed of me? We dream of many, the sky answered. Most choose not to look up long enough to see. You did. Elara thought of the nights she climbed the hill as a child, staring at the shifting letters above, trying to read words she wasn't yet old enough to understand. How long have you been waiting? Storms, summers, winters. Words. Long enough. The eye of light blinked, and the hall unfolded around her like a turning page. We do not want another keeper who breaks beneath us. We want one who walks among us. The sky continued. Who knows how to return story to the ground. Elara pictured herself back in the village, using her gift not just to pull memory upward, but to bring it downward, back where life could actually touch it. What does that mean? She asked. The sky only said, you will see. The hall dissolved, its cloud mirrors unraveling into strands of pale light. When the mist cleared, Alara found herself standing in a much smaller space. A single name floated before her. Not dozens, not thousands. Just one. Alara. She stared at it as if it were a stranger. The letters shimmered softly, made of the same cloud ink as all the others, yet somehow heavier. This was her name as the sky knew it, not just sound but presence. "Why is my name here?" she whispered. "Because you too are a story," the sky replied. "Stories must also be chosen." Her throat tightened. "What choice is there about me?" For a moment no answer came. Then the name split into two pale forms, hovering side by side. In one, she saw herself remaining forever in these chambers, walking deeper and deeper into memory, writing and reading and recording until the edges between her and the sky vanished completely. No village, no seasons, no waking world. Only ink and vapor and the endless labor of remembering. In the other, she stood on her hill again, beneath a changing sky, teaching others to read the clouds, speaking not for them but with them, allowing the sky to write through many mouths instead of only hers. One Alara was keeper, alone. The other was something else. A bridge. "You can choose that?" she asked, voice barely more than breath. "We can offer," the sky said. "Only you can choose." The two visions faded, leaving her alone with her name once more. It hovered, waiting. Alara took a long breath. She thought of Arian running through golden rye and how the air had smelled of wheat and sunlight, even inside a memory. She thought of the mother's hands, the storm lantern, the child's voice insisting, "I'm still here." She thought of the villagers gathering beneath her written sky, seeing parts of themselves they had forgotten. She thought of the storm scribe before her, laughing as words wrapped around her like a storm cloak, and of the way that same cloak must have eventually dragged her to her knees. "I don't want to vanish into the sky," Alara said softly. The air thinned around her, listening. "I don't want to stop being someone. I don't want to be only a function, only a quill." Mist trembled, as if the world had been waiting for that admission. "What do you want to be?" the sky asked. She swallowed. "A writer," she said. "A bridge. Someone who remembers with others, not for them." Silence followed, but it was not disapproval. It was decision. The name Alara brightened, then sank into her chest with a soft rush of warmth, as if she had inhaled herself. Ink pulsed through her veins, but it felt lighter now, tethered to heartbeat instead of weight. The sky spoke, voice soft as cloud shade crossing a field. "Then we will not bind you as we bound the last. We will walk with you. If you walk with us." Felt less like a bargain and more like a promise. Alara nodded. "I will." A breeze moved through the chamber, lifting loose wisps of cloud like startled birds. A doorway formed ahead, not the teardrop of storm, nor the fogged threshold of the library, but an arch of thin, clear sky-blue light. Through it she could see open air and distant stars. Home, or something near to it. As she approached, the clouds around her whispered fragments of stories she had touched. "Thank you. Remember us kindly. Let us change." Their gratitude curled around her ankles, her wrists, the nape of her neck, gentle as shawls. Alara paused at the edge of the new doorway and looked back once. The deep halls of memory blinked slowly, like an old mind resting after long effort. "I'll return," she promised, "but not to take everything. Only what we need." "We know," the sky said. "That is why you may go." She stepped through. Night air hit her face like cool water. She was back on her hill. The village lanterns glowed below. Crickets sang. Somewhere, a dog barked once and then fell silent again. Above her, the clouds shifted, not in frantic patterns of words, but in gentle streams. Some sentences glowed faintly, others thinned, already fading into mist. Alara raised her hand almost instinctively. Inklight flowed to her fingertips. But this time, she did not write a question to the sky. She wrote a sentence for the people beneath it. "You are not forgotten." The words stretched in soft blue across the stars. For a moment, she felt hundreds of hearts quicken in the village below. People who did not know why their chests felt suddenly lighter, why their tears came more easily, why old thoughts rose to the surface. They did not see every word. They did not need to. The sky had begun to remember with them, not above them. Alara smiled, a small, tired, real thing. She was still herself. Inkborn, keeper, bridge, and high above, behind the gentle drift of clouds, the deeper halls of memory stirred like a dream not yet finished. They waited. She would return. But now, for the first time, Alara turned away from the sky and walked down the hill toward the village, carrying all that she had seen not as a burden, but as a story waiting to be told. Alara stepped down from the hill as though the night itself carried her. Words still shimmered above her, pale and blue, trailing softly across the stars like threads of slow-moving light. But for the first time since she had learned to write the sky, the sentences did not stay above her. They fell, not like broken clouds, not like storms, but like memory turning gentle enough to touch the earth again. Blue specks drifted downward in delicate spirals, landing on rooftops, resting in palm lines, dissolving into drinking water and woven baskets and children's hair. The air tasted faintly of ink and rain. Every breath hints of forgotten things returning. Alara could feel it. Stories were no longer trapped above the world. They had come home. She did not speak. Yet the clouds above her whispered anyway. "You brought us back." At sunrise, the village woke differently. A child sat up from sleep and told her mother she had dreamed of a man with warm hands and a voice like evening light, the grandfather she had never met. A woman drawing water from the well paused when blue shimmered across her fingertips. Suddenly she remembered standing in that same spot decades before, laughing beside her sister. She cried not from sorrow, but from recognition. Two brothers who had not spoken in years walked past one another on the road. The moment Alara's ink settled on them, both stopped. Both remembered the same story, the night they stole apples under the moon, laughing until dawn. And they smiled. All morning, small miracles unfolded like petals. No shouting, no storms, only gentle return. Alara felt the pulse of it, memory no longer frozen in the sky, but breathing among people again. Yet she also felt something else. The sky was quiet, too quiet. as if waiting for the price of what she had just done. On the third day, a farmer approached her. His hands shook. His lips trembled around a question he did not want answered. "I remembered my wife," he said. "She died in winter. I had forgotten the sound of her voice." His eyes filled like wells after rain. "Was it right to give it back to me?" Alara opened her mouth, but no answer came. Had she done right? Had she woken joy or reopened wounds? The sky stirred above her, uncertain as a breath held too long. Memory is not gentle just because it returns softly. She looked at the farmer and whispered, "I don't know, but I think remembering hurts less than forgetting." He bowed his head, a nod of grief but also acceptance. That night, more rain fell from the clouds. Heavier, darker. Not all memories were kind. A week later, the first storm arrived. Wind tore sentences apart in the sky. Words collided, tangled, bled into one another. Names rained like hail, sharp as regret. People hid inside. Doors shut. Lanterns dimmed, as though houses themselves were afraid. Ink pooled in the dirt like spilled night. Memories that were never meant to return fastened to breathing lungs, filling dreams with voices asking to be heard. Too many at once. The sky boomed with a sentence that did not belong to any one person. "Remember us all." Alara fell to her knees. The storm was not anger. It was overflow. She had opened a door too wide. She had given memory back without teaching the world how to hold it. Lightning cracked across the clouds. Not white, but deep cobalt. Shadows moved within the storm. Not memories, not clouds. Unwritten things. They came whispering. Not names. Not people once alive. Possibilities. Lives never lived. Words never spoken. Choices that almost happened but didn't, yet still clung to the world like abandoned breath. The unwritten pressed against Alara's mind. Neither kind nor cruel, simply present. They wanted form. They wanted ink. They wanted her. "Alara," they said without sound. "Write us. Let us be." She staggered backward. "I can't write what never was." "You already do," the storm replied. "Every cloud is a future not yet chosen." Ink surged around her feet like tide. She felt herself slipping, not physically but inward into the space where stories form before they have shape. If she fell, she would become like the scribes before her, a vessel for everything, a girl who forgot where the sky ended and she began. She forced her voice through the ink-thick air. "No!" The storm froze, not stopped but listening. "I will not write all of you," she said. "I will not become a sky that cannot breathe." Wind shuddered. Raindrops paused like held tears. "Then choose," the storm said. Again, the same command the halls had given her. Again, the same command the halls had given her. Who will you hold? What will you release? Alara stood. Her dress clung to her with ink and rain, but her voice was steadier now. She raised her hand, fingers bright with cloud ink, not to write in the sky, to write downward. Her letters fell like comets, from sky to earth, not earth to sky. Word by word, she wrote into the storm. Not all stories must stay. Not all memories must rise. Some truths belong to rain. Every sentence she wrote turned storm into mist, mist into dew, dew into soil, and soil remembers gently. Villagers watched through cracked doors, breath silent as prayer. The ink storm quieted, not gone but softened, as if lulled by a language finally understood. Alara realized then, the sky was never meant to hold everything. Neither was she. But she could teach memory how to land softly, how to live, how to leave, how to return when ready. When dawn came, clouds hung low like paper drying from rain. Children stepped outside first, small feet splashing through puddles dark with ink. One girl lifted a drop on her fingertip, and when it touched her skin, she laughed suddenly. "I remember my mother singing," she said. "She hasn't sung since winter." Her mother, startled, tried, and her voice cracked like ice breaking into spring. But she sang, faint, real. Alara felt her heart swell like warm air beneath wings. Maybe she could help this world remember without drowning. Maybe she could make forgetting kinder too. Maybe she was both rain and sky, ink and silence, writer and witness. That night she climbed the hill again, not to write the sky full, but to write it open. She lifted her hand, ink gathering like breath, and wrote one slow sentence across the stars. Memory is not meant to stay still. The sky rippled, not resisting, not demanding, simply answering. And you are not meant to carry us alone. Alara closed her eyes. She no longer felt like a girl chosen by clouds. She felt like someone walking beside them. Partner, not vessel. She whispered upward, "Help me teach them." The sky responded like dawn forming behind the eyelids of night. "We will." Ink that learned to speak back. The sky was quieter after the storm eased. Not peaceful exactly, but thoughtful, like a heart that had just remembered how to beat without breaking. Alara walked the village streets in early morning fog, her steps soft, her fingertips still stained with rain-born ink. Children whispered her name, but not with fear, with reverence, and maybe a little wonder. She was the girl who brought memories home, the girl who wrote the sky open, the girl who could turn forgetting into rainfall. But she was not a goddess. She was tired, and that truth pulsed beneath her ribs like an unwritten sentence. Because the storm had not been the end. It was an introduction. The sky had tasted change, and change never rests long. Fog where dreams became pages. That night, when the village slept, Alara dreamed she was walking through the library of cloud scrolls again. But this time the scrolls were open. Pages fluttered on spectral wind. Words rearranged themselves as she approached, as though waiting for her corrections. Not all memories were true anymore. Some twisted into longing. Some softened like old fabric. Some sharpened like regret polished to a blade. Stories reshape themselves when returned to the living. Alara placed her palm on a drifting page, and felt a dream spill into her like warm tea. A child who believed the moon was a lantern carried by a giant white bird. A widow who remembered her lover taller than he ever truly was. A soldier who believed he had forgiven his enemy, but had only forgotten them. Memory was no longer storage. It was dialogue. Ink was evolving. Alara awoke abruptly, heart racing. Not because of noise, but because of silence. Too deep, too deliberate. She stepped outside, bare feet sinking into damp earth, still scented faintly of ink. Above her, letters wrote themselves across the sky. Without her hand. Not many, just 5. We remember through you. Alara froze. The sky no longer needed her voice to speak. It was learning, growing, becoming something closer to alive. The letters trembled, then split like dew under sunlight, dissolving into countless small dots that drifted downward like pollen. The village dreamed more deeply that night. Some cried, some laughed, some woke whispering names long buried. Alara stood beneath it all, and realized she was no longer only a scribe. She was a mirror. The world was remembering through her, and the sky was remembering through the world. A circle forming, a system learning balance. She whispered, "Show me what you need next." The sky shifted like breath, and answered. The next morning, Alara found a child sitting on her doorstep, no older than 6, hands cupped tightly against her chest. Inside her palms swirled a single droplet of ink, alive, pulsing, shimmering with faint whispers. Alara knelt. "Where did you get this?" The girl opened her hands slowly. The ink droplet lifted itself like a tiny sun, and spoke, not with sound but with memory. "I am a voice, forgotten but not gone. Help me speak." Alara nearly dropped it. Ink had never spoken before. It had recorded stories, remembered lives, softened grief, but it had never asked. The droplet hovered in front of her, trembling with need. Not demand, need. She cupped her hands around it, and the voice settled into her pulse like small wings. A whisper echoed up her spine. "You are not only writer, you are translator." Crescent moon, the first conversation between ink and breath. That night, Alara climbed the hill with the droplet held carefully in cloth. The sky was thin and soft like vellum. She lifted the ink toward the stars. "Speak," she said gently. "I will listen." The droplet shimmered and stretched itself into a string of tiny words, delicate as spider silk. Not a story, a plea. And the ink settled, trusting her. The sky above rustled like pages turning. White medium star where ink chose names. Alara returned to the village with the memories inside her. She did not write them into the sky. Not yet. She waited, listened, watched people with new eyes, not searching for story, but searching for space. A young blacksmith with steady hands and silent grief. A lonely girl who collected feathers and never sang. An old man who laughed loudly to hide the echo of missing children. They were not empty, but they had room. So one by one, like planting seeds, Alara touched their palms with ink. The blacksmith breathed out a memory of snowfall, and forgave himself for a brother lost years ago. The feather-collecting girl woke humming a melody. The forgotten composer had never sung aloud, and the whole village paused to listen. The old man wept and laughed together, grief and joy finally sharing the same breath. Not all memories belonged in the sky. Some belonged in people. Alara was no longer just a skywriter. She was a gardener of stories. Sun behind small cloud, the day the clouds called her name. Weeks passed. Rain came softer. Memories came like morning, gentle, bright, familiar. One evening, as Alara sat beside the well, her fingertips stained light blue like faded sunset, the sky spoke again. Not thunder, not storm. A sentence across the horizon, clear as dawn on new snow. You have changed, US. Now we will change you. Alara rose slowly, ink fluttering across her skin like migrating birds. She knew this was not threat, but invitation. She looked up at the sky she once feared to write, the sky that now breathed with her, and whispered, I am ready. The clouds parted like pages opening to their next chapter. Light poured through, soft as memory finding a home. Alara stepped forward, not to write, not to receive, to become part of the story she had awakened. Find the others. The wind stirred. Alara felt understanding unfurl inside her like dawn. She had returned memory to earth, but not all memory had found a place to belong. Some were still lost, unanchored, unheard. Maybe the storm had not been chaos. Maybe it was overflow from voices with nowhere to go. She whispered back to the ink, where are they? The droplet pulsed, then split into 3 smaller droplets. Like seeds, they drifted into the night, glowing faintly blue. Alara followed, barefoot, silent, determined. The droplets led her beyond the fields, past the well, past the orchard where apples remembered laughter, into the woods where shadows held centuries. There, beneath branches heavy with sleep, she found them, 3 pools of ink, still and dark as old grief, unheld memories, waiting, candle memories that did not want to sleep. Alara knelt beside the first pool. It shuddered at her presence, like a creature waking from too long without breath. A whisper rose, do not let us fade. She dipped a finger into the ink, and the world vanished. Snow, footsteps, a figure kneeling beside a grave that had no name. Their grief wrapped around her chest like cold vines. When she pulled her hand away, she gasped, and the memory clung to her palm like frost. The second pool spoke. We were never heard. She touched it, and saw a woman writing letters she never sent, each one dissolving into tears before dawn. The third pool trembled like fear. We were almost born. She touched it, and visions burst like stars. A story that could have been. A life never lived. A song composed in silence. Alara knelt in the dark, hands shaking with 3 histories that did not belong to her, yet lived inside her skin like second heartbeat. She finally whispered, I will carry you, but I will not keep you forever. I will find you places to live. The light that opened above Alara did not burn. It wrapped around her slowly, like a warm blanket lifted from a sunlit stone, like morning mist deciding very gently to become day. She did not rise into it, so much as lean. 1 step forward, and the hill, the well, the village lanterns, the dark outline of the orchard, all of it softened, as if brushed over with a thumb soaked in light. For a moment she was afraid, not of the sky, of disappearing, of becoming only a function, a force, a role, no longer a girl who laughed, who ached, who sometimes felt small. But the light whispered as it touched her, "You will not vanish. You will widen." The first sensation was weightlessness, not the falling kind. The kind you feel when a burden you've carried so long, you forgot how heavy it was, is suddenly gone. The ache of too many memories pressing on her chest. The fear of storms she could not control. The loneliness of knowing what no one else could see. It all loosened, not because it left her, but because something else had arrived to share it. The second sensation was multiplicity. She could feel herself in many places at once. On the hill, feet bare, dress damp with old rain. Above the village, drifting with the clouds, light as breath. Deep within the library of mist and scrolls, palms pressed to ancient sentences. And somewhere even deeper, in a place with no direction, only heartbeat and ink. For the first time, the sky did not feel like something above her. Felt like something beside her. A living, breathing vastness, expanding and contracting with every story remembered, every story released. "You are not our vessel," it said. "You are our neighbor." The light thinned, and when Alara opened her eyes, if eyes was still the right word, she saw a map, not of land, of connection. Lines of soft blue light ran between people in the village below. Threads from parent to child, from friends long separated, from strangers who had shared a single quiet kindness. Each thread pulsed with memory. Some were bright with joy, a shared song, a first embrace, the smell of bread in a warm kitchen. Some were dimmed by time, a promise half kept, a lullaby forgotten, a path once walked together. Some were frayed by hurt, words said in anger, doors slammed and never reopened. Above those threads drifted clouds, not random. They gathered over clusters of lives, holding what had been too heavy to carry alone. When it rained, those clouds did not simply empty. They chose where to fall. A village that had forgotten how to tell stories received a gentle storm of childhood memories. A town hardened by years of war was washed in dreams of peace no one had ever dared to say aloud. The world was not just below the sky, it was woven with it, and Alara could see every stitch. The sky showed her more. She saw the first scribe again, the storm girl, laughing as thunder wrote its name in every language. She saw how love for the world had driven her, to hold too much, to keep too much, until even her joy became a cage. She saw the moment that girl broke. Not a dramatic shattering, just a quiet evening, alone on a mountain, when she realized she could not remember which feelings were hers. The sky had mourned her ever since. "We do not want that again," it whispered. "We want you to remain someone." Alara floated in that luminous in-between, full of maps and threads and old grief. She thought of her own village, the child who now hummed a stranger's melody as if it were her own, the brothers who had forgiven each other by remembering a stolen apple, the farmer who had asked if it was right to give him back his wife's voice. She thought of her own body, her feet that knew the way to the hill even in darkness, her hands that still smelled faintly of ink, her heart that beat in its simple, steady rhythm. No matter how vast her understanding became. "What do you need from me?" she finally asked. The sky's answer was simple, and impossible, and exactly right. "Walk with us, not ahead, not underneath." With first she didn't understand how. How do you walk with something that has no feet? How do you accompany something that encircles the world? The light around her softened, and she found herself standing, truly standing, on a familiar path, the hill road beneath her, the sky above, quiet and clear, a thin river of silver cloud curling from horizon to horizon. Had it all been a vision, a dream? Her fingers glowed faintly blue when she lifted them. No, not a dream, a lesson. She looked up, and this time, she did not rush to write. She listened. Wind moved through the grass with the sound of pages turning. Owls blinked like commas in the dark. Far away, someone laughed in their sleep, and the echo floated upward like a question mark. The sky was already speaking. It always had been. She had simply been too busy writing over it to hear. So she did something she had never done before. She sat down and said nothing. Minutes passed, or hours, or the gentle forever that lives inside a quiet moment. Eventually, the sky wrote a single word above her in soft, shimmering ink. "Thanks." Alara smiled. "You're welcome," she said. For the first time, they were not telling each other what to be. They were talking. Days turned into weeks. Alara did not stop writing, but she wrote differently now. She did not capture every memory that rose toward her. She watched for the ones that trembled on the edge of vanishing, the ones that might soften someone's bitterness, or ease a long-held fear, or open a closed door. She drew them gently into the clouds, and then back down again, like dipping a cloth in water to cool a fevered brow. More importantly, she began to teach, not magic, not how to command the sky, how to notice it. She taught children to lie on their backs in the grass, and guess whose laughter the small, bright curls of cloud belonged to. She taught old men to sit under the edge of storms, and listen for apologies wrapped in thunder. She taught women who had lost too much, to watch how rain sometimes fell only in one small patch of earth, as if visiting a specific memory. "This is not all mine to hold," she told them. "You are already part of it. You have always been part of it." Some were afraid. Some were skeptical. Some felt anger, certain that memory had done nothing but hurt them. Alara did not argue. She simply stayed, walked with them, showed them slowly that remembering and hurting were not the same thing, though they often arrived together. Over time, people began to speak to the sky on their own. Whispers, questions, thanks, complaints shouted during storms, and the sky answered them, in rain, in cloud shapes, in sudden, unexplained feelings of warmth, or the gentle urge to forgive. The more they spoke, the less Alara felt like a single thin bridge. She was one path among many, Ink flowed cleaner that way. The true test came with another storm, one much larger than the first ink tempest. Its clouds towering like mountains, its underside heavy with 1,000 tangled memories. From 100 far-off places, Alara felt it approaching long before thunder rolled. But this time, she did not run to the hill alone. The villagers came with her, not because she asked them to, because they felt it. Children clutching small lanterns, their faces bright with fear and curiosity. Elders walking slowly but surely, leaning on staffs that had seen many seasons. Mothers, fathers, lovers, friends, all gathered under the restless, swirling sky. The first drops fell. Not water, ink, dark and thick and full of voices. Last time, those voices had overwhelmed her. This time, they met not just one listening heart, but many. People reached out their hands, letting memories fall into their palms. Some flinched at what they saw. Some smiled through tears. Some closed their fingers and whispered, "I will keep this one safe." Alara raised her arms, not in command, but in invitation. "Take only what you can hold," she said warmly. "Let the rest become rain. Let the earth remember, too." The storm roared, but not in anger. In relief, poured out its burden, and the world received what it needed, and released what it could not. When the clouds finally thinned, the sky looked lighter than she had ever seen it. Not empty, balanced. "Do you see?" The sky asked her, quietly delighted. She nodded, exhausted and joyful to her bones. "I don't have to be everything," she whispered. "No one does," the sky replied. From then on, nights in the village changed. People still told stories around fires, but now they also paused to see which stories the clouds were telling back. Travelers who passed through claimed that dreams in this place felt strangely kind, even when they were full of old sorrow. Children grew up knowing that if they whispered a fear to the sky before sleep, sometimes the answer would come, as the shape of a comforting cloud in the morning, or as rain falling only on their window, or as a sudden memory of a time they had been brave before. The sky had always been there, but now it felt near, not a distant ceiling, but a companion. Alara still had nights of doubt, nights when her chest felt too full, when the weight of what she had seen, and carried, and changed, pressed down on her like low clouds. On those nights, she would climb the hill alone again. She would lie back, look upward, and let herself be very small. The stars did not mind. The sky did not demand. It simply stayed above and around her, breathing slow, writing gentle, meaningless shapes, just for beauty, just for the pleasure of moving. "You don't always have to be a story," she told it softly. A single star flickered brighter, as if laughing. "Neither do you," it replied. Years would pass. People would tell tales about the girl whose words stayed in the sky, about the ink that fell like rain, and gave old memories new homes. They would say she was part cloud, part human, part something older than either. But those who truly knew her would remember other things, the way she listened more than she spoke, the way she smiled at storms, not with bravery, but with friendship, the way she reminded grieving people that forgetting was not betrayal, and remembering was not a trap. Both were simply ways of loving. On certain nights, if you stood very still beneath a clear sky, in that quiet village, you might see words written so faintly, you'd think you imagined them. You are not forgotten, or some truths belong to rain, or you do not have to carry everything alone. And if you ever climbed the hill, where Elara first wrote her questions into the night, and lay down in the grass, and watched the clouds drift and curl and thin, you might feel it too, that soft, watching presence, like a story that has decided. It is content to rest for a while. The sky still dreams. It dreams of us. And somewhere in that dreaming, a girl who once feared being consumed, who once believed she had to hold every story alone, walks at its side, ink on her fingers, earth under her feet, and a heart that belongs to both soil and stars. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.